You're listening to Unsolicited Yarn with Faith, a podcast about everything and anything, pure vibes, pure cruise. Let's get into this episode, baby. You guys, welcome to the first episode of Unsolicited Yarn. It has been a long time coming. We bless God for his faithfulness. So I'm so excited. I'm your host, Faith, and welcome to Unsolicited Yarn, a podcast where you didn't ask me, but I'm going to say anyways. Pure vibes, pure cruise. We're going to be talking a lot of things, controversial things, things that you didn't ask me, things that will cause trouble at dining tables, at Thanksgiving, dinner parties, wherever. That's what we're going to be talking about on this podcast. So people ask me, Faith, where'd you get this Unsolicited Yarn name from? Of all things that you chose Unsolicited Yarn. So first, let me start with unsolicited. Unsolicited, according to Google, is unwarranted advice. Nobody asked me, but I was going to say it, right? And the yarn is pidgin English, right? So in Nigeria, there's a word called yarn. It means to talk or to gist or whatever, and it's spelled Y-A-R-N. So people are asking me, Faith, out of all things, why did you pick Y-A-N instead of Y-A-R-N? I liked Y-A-N better. It just sounded more posh, and I like posh things. So that's what I chose. And people are asking me, what are we supposed to expect in this podcast? Like, what are you going to talk about? I don't know. It's going to be pure vibes. We're going to talk about a lot of things, controversial things. If you follow me on Twitter, I like to give my opinion, whether you don't like it or not. I don't care. You can come and beat me in your house, whatever you want to do. Anyways, I will say it. So that's what Unsolicited Yarn will be about. We're going to talk about a lot of controversial things, and it will be once a month. So maybe sometimes might sprinkle a little 2 episodes here and there. Maybe, I don't know. It depends on how I'm feeling that month. I will post it. So, and then expect friends on here too. So a lot of my friends are going to come on here. We're going to talk about a lot of controversial things. I'm even so excited for the second episode, because I know it's going to step on some toes. But if I'm not stepping on toes, what are we doing? Anyways, so let's get into this episode. You guys saw the name, Bitter Nigerian Aunties. People are asking me, Bitter Nigerian Aunties, where'd you get this name from? AKA BNA, right? So Bitter Nigerian Auntie, I think people, when they think about it, in my mind, I'm just imagining Patience Oko. If you don't know who Patience Oko is a Nigerian actress that's very famous for her bitter roles. I mean, when I say that lady is bitter, she's bitter baje. Anyways, so that's who I thought about when I was thinking of this episode. So when I thought about it, I was like, okay, who is actually bitter in my life? Like, how many people do I know? How many aunties do I know that are bitter? And then I started thinking in retrospect, okay, you know what I actually realized? I've been a bitter Nigerian auntie before. And that's the thing I like about this term, BNA. It's a universal term. So before you're listening to this podcast and you're like, oh my gosh, this is a Nigerian thing. No, let's stop there. Bitter Nigerian auntie is a universal term. It applies to any sex, race, ethnicity, whatever it may be, nationality. Is for everybody. And let's just get something straight. This podcast, no big Bonro podcast. I used to be a big Bonro before. Is that a word? I don't know. I used to be a big Bonro before, but this podcast is not a big Bonro podcast. We're not coming here gossiping about people. No. This is not a gossip podcast. I will say it again. This is not a gossip podcast, but we'll be talking about controversial things like what we're talking about today. So I just wanted to put that little disclaimer there so everybody will know, right? So, what is a bitter Nigerian auntie? A bitter Nigerian auntie is like, Oyibo Sokwe, plain Jane. Oyibo people say plain Jane, right? Americans say plain Jane. Like, plain Jane is a universal term, and it applies to a lot of things. Okay, quick side notes, right? I'm going to say a lot of things in here that have slangs and so many other things. I will try to explain, but if you don't understand, please DM us on our social media platforms. I will gladly explain. Hit me up, Faith. What did you say? What does this mean? I will gladly explain. So don't feel shy or don't be like, oh, I feel left out. No. This is an inclusive podcast for everybody. So let's get back into it. So bitter Nigerian auntie is a person that's very, very bitter, and they don't just keep that bitterness to themselves. they transfer it to other people. So if you watch a lot of Nigerian movies, Patience Oko is a very jealous person. But the scary part about Patience Oko as a BNA is that she hides it. She hides it a lot, and it's very subtle. She gives it in like little bits and pieces. Like, okay, I'll give an example. Her niece is getting married, so they bring the Ashoebi and they're like, Aunty Patience, like, this is the Ashoebi for our wedding. And I guess maybe, let's say the girl's getting married to one well-to-do guy that was supposed to marry Aunty Patience's daughter or something, and Aunty Patience is bitter, but she can't say she's bitter. So she gives like slight comments. They'll come and be like, Aunty Patience, this is the Ashoebi, what do you think? She'd be like, this Ashoebi is nice, but it looks a little cheap. Or she's complaining about everything concerning the wedding. The girl's not doing this well, the girl's not doing that well, or this is this, how can you pick this venue, blah 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 blah. It's very, 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 very subtle. So I was like, so a lot of us growing up, we know a lot of BNAs, whether it's man, woman, white, black, Ghanaian, whatever it may be, African American, whatever it may be. We know a lot of bitter Nigerian aunties, and a lot of things that bitter Nigerian aunties do, or bitter Nigerian people do, is they downplay you a lot. They downplay your qualities, your craft. Like, you're like, oh, I want to charge for this price, and they're like, are you sure you want to do that? Like, those kind of thing. It's not constructive criticism. There's a difference between it. It's just like, it's subtle jealousy, but they're not really saying it's jealousy. So when I was sitting down, I was like, I can't come here and be saying people are bitter Nigerian aunties if I don't look at myself and I check myself too. So let's be honest. At some point in my life, I have been a bitter Nigerian auntie. Oh my gosh. Yes. I have been a bitter Nigerian auntie. I'm even ashamed to say it, but anyways, we'll say it. You have to be honest here. And now that I'm thinking about it, I should probably pick up the phone and call the babe and actually apologize to her. So yeah, there was a point where I was a bitter Nigerian auntie, and I didn't know at the time that I was a bitter Nigerian auntie. It was just in a lot of subtle things that I was doing. And when I was doing this podcast, I started thinking, I was like, dang, Faith, you were actually bitter at that point, right? So bitter Nigerian aunties, like I said, and a lot of people, they always think like those bitter Nigerianness attitude, whatever, is only in the older Nigerians or older Africans or older people in general. Like, I would never be like that auntie. I can tell you for a fact, boo, you've been like that auntie like 20 times in your life, and you don't even know that you were bitter, right? And young people always think they're exempt from these qualities. So I sat down and I was like, how do people get to this point of bitterness, like where you're just bitter, like everything people do, nothing's good enough for you, or you're just shady comments. People don't like to come around you with things because they know that you would downplay or just give nasty comments. And I realized life happens. Like, there are things that happen in your life and qualities and so many things that affect you, that you begin to ingrain these things in your personality, and then you're 40 and everybody's like telling you, why are you so bitter? Why are you so bitter, uncle? Why are you so bitter, auntie? And you're just like, I'm not bitter. And people are telling you you are bitter, but you don't want to admit that you're bitter. And I started sympathizing with them because I have a lot of aunties like that. Hey, God, I hope they're not listening. I have a lot of aunties like that are bitter, but they don't know they're bitter. But if you hear the story of how they got to that point, it makes a lot of sense. And you begin to sympathize with them. And then now I'm checking myself, trying to make sure that I'm not like those people, right? And it's no offense to them because, you know, everybody deserves grace and all those kind of things. But that's just a fact. So now let's get to the young people. A lot of young people are bitter Nigerian aunties, bitter Nigerian young people. They love to be shady. When I say shady, I mean Twitter is evident of bitterness. Like, you just see somebody post something and you think that's the right time to be talking about when you dated a guy and you did something to you. Who asked you to say that, right? You see somebody's post, you now be using your past experience to be point sand inside their gallery. Who asked you, right? So A lot of people do that on Twitter. It's on social media. It's in friendship groups, in people's group chats, okay? So many other things that people do, and they talk about people and they're just being bitter. And I feel like guys listening to this, just like, you're probably listing off in your head how many young girls you know that are bitter. But before we even go there, do you know that guys are very, very, very bitter? Like, guys, no offense, I said we're going to be controversial, so don't vex for me. But guys have very, very bitter Nigerian aunties tendencies. One thing I notice in guy friendships is very, very rare for them to give compliments to each other. And I'll be looking, I'm like, do you guys actually like each other? Or is this friendship just for show? You know, like, well, these are my boys, but we're just hanging out. I'll give an example. You see like a group of guys, one of them walks in fresh from head to toe, like he looks so good. I mean, in under 5 minutes, his boys have dropped jokes on him on how he looks bad. Guy, this your shoe one kind, this your shirt one kind. How you wear face shirt for hair? How did you do this? How'd you do that? How'd you do that? And I started peeping. I was like, and you know this saying that they say, in every joke, there's truth. A lot of guy friendships are like that. And a lot of guys are very, very bitter, but they don't want to say it. And they hide it behind jokes and roasting, which is very common from when I grew up. Like, guys used to roast each other a lot. And at some point, it stopped being funny and it started looking like bitterness, because it looks like you want what the person has, but you can't say it, so you roast them. And a lot of guys always say, oh, women are bitter, women circles are bitter, why are women so bitter to their friends? Boy, why are you bitter to your friends? So now, as you're sitting down, you're listening to this podcast, I know you're just thinking of moments that you've been bitter. So I want to hear stories, right? You guys share, when have you been bitter, and how did you know you were bitter, and what are you doing right now to change your bitterness? And also share stories of people that have been bitter to you, right? And let's try to change it. Let's be the generation of change, where we're not bitter, or we support people. We don't carry bad belly inside of us. We're not enemy of progress. We're not mini incarnates of Patient Ozoko roaming around this earth, making people's lives miserable. Okay? Yeah, exactly. So as we get to the end of this podcast, I know this was short, guys, but don't worry, we got more coming for you. I just want everybody to check themselves. Share this podcast with people. Hey, no, that's bad advice, but I'm going to say it anyways. Share it with people that you feel like are bitter, but you don't want to come out and say it. Actually, you know what? That's childish. Be direct. Have conversations with people. If you know somebody that has been a bitter Nigerian auntie to you at some point, be direct. Have a conversation. Say, oh, I didn't like the way you treated me. If you don't want to be direct, use this podcast. Send it to them. It's like when you buy deodorant for somebody and they're smelling, but you don't want to say it. It's kind of like that. That's what you should do. So share it to them. Let me hear feedback. If you agreed, if you didn't agree, that's your own. I'm playing. But you can talk to me on social media platforms. I want to hear stories. I want to hear incidents of bitter Nigerian aunties and many ways that you have. And for the guys, you need to change. Please, we need change behavior. Start complimenting your friends. Stop downing how they look. And guys are very they won't say it because it's always the boys, it's jokes. It's not joke, boo. They're being real. Every joke comes from a place of truth. So, exactly. So address your friendships. Hey, God, I'm causing trouble. Disclaimer, if there's any fight that comes out of this, it's not my own problem. Now I'm just saying now. Don't come and say, Faith said, I don't say anything, no. I didn't advise, or I did, but I didn't advise you. If you take the advice, you are on your own. Abi, you are on your own. Say it with me. I am on my own. So yeah, thank you guys for joining the first episode of Unsolicited Yarn. There are many, many more episodes coming. I can't wait for you guys to listen and share and talk about Unsolicited Yarn with me, and we'll just have conversations like I'm your bestie in your head, okay? So on each episode of Unsolicited Yarn, we're going to shout out a small business. So first up is Fufu Catering in Atlanta. This lady has the best amala I've tasted in a long time. But if you're an amala hater, don't worry. She has your back. If you're looking to quench your wax in Atlanta, look for Fufu Catering. So that's it for this episode of Unsolicited Yarn. If you have any questions, comments, or reservations, don't forget to hit us up on our various social media platforms or email us. And don't forget to share with your friends too. See you next time.